What's going on, everybody? My name is George, and welcome to 69 Baja Outdoors. I am coming back from a 4-week hiatus. It was nice to get away for a while and spend some time with family and do some fishing without worrying about catching anything. And I did record a lot of that, and I didn't catch squat. Nobody wants to see me fishing without catching anything. So with that being said, this episode is going to be about ball joint beams. Now, I was given 2 ball joint beams for the camper project. Upon further research, I don't think that the front beam idea for the trailer is going to work out so well. We are going to work on these beams. This one is an adjustable beam, which didn't fare so well. As you can see, it is in 2 pieces. And I'm going to explain to you what the issue with this was or is. And I'm going to show you how to fix it. So this beam, even though it was cut correctly, they did not bevel these edges, these 2 edges here. And by beveling the edges, it gives you more surface area to weld to, and they probably welded it too cold. Obviously, you can see it's pretty well piled up on top. What we're going to do is we're going to get those off there. Now, these don't fit in my sandblaster hole. So because it's apart now, I may as well sandblast one side, sandblast the other side. We'll get these off of here, get everything cleaned up, and re-weld the adjusters on. And we're going to wind up selling this beam to fund the camper project. Now, I did order the doors and windows for the camper. We're going to be replacing, not necessarily the bearings, but we are going to clean up everything inside. This thing's been sitting in my garage for a long time. We're going to replace the seals. We're going to verify the bearings are good, the bushings are good, and I think we're just going to weld it back up after it's clean and go from there. So I'm guessing when this thing came apart, it hit the ground pretty hard. So we're going to straighten all of this up first, and we're going to get this in the sandblaster. Old trusty air hammer. Yeah. Now, that did not come out as well as I had hoped, but I will weld all of this up. It does need a drain hole. As weird as that is, they all came stock with a drain hole, or at least I'm assuming that's what it's for, but that one's seen a little bit better days. It did crack here. We're going to put a bead here, get that filled in. But other than that, you can see that this beam is in great shape. It's dirty, but I mean, patina, that's it. You know what I mean? There isn't that much wrong with it. It's just surface rust. I may even just weld the whole thing around just to be on the safe side. All of this, it's just surface rust. So there's no, these pieces here are good. And I almost forgot to pull these off. Pull the seals off. Well, they weren't in there very tight. But I do need to pull the bearings out. I'm not pulling the, we'll call them bushings because they're not bearings, but there's another set in there. Doesn't look all that bad, but I don't want to put the bearings in the sandblaster. So I do need to pull these before that. And we are going to use the slide hammer on this. So you guys have an idea of what we're doing. Very lightly. I wish I had a smaller hammer. You want to go back and forth. You don't want to tweak them, and you don't want to beat on them either. You just want to lightly tap it just to get them to kind of slide on out. There's one. We're going to try the 2-jaw puller, see if maybe that'll work out a little better. That first one sure did take a long time. It wasn't in there very tight. So we're gonna give this a shot and see if this is gonna work out a little bit better. Hopefully, it may not. Hopefully just look at that. Very nice. Very nice. I should have done that in the first place. Okay, so now that those are out, I can stuff some rags in each hole so I don't get any sand inside to wear out the bushings. And then get this in the sandblaster. I do have to take the Zerk fittings out and put something. Actually, you know what? I'm going to replace the Zerk fittings, so we're going to leave these in. Actually, I can put vacuum caps on them, and then I can just leave them there, and it won't mess them up at all. So, take a couple vacuum caps, like so. Which one? Which one to use? Which one to use? White looks good. Nice snug fit. Cover those up. This way they don't get screwed up in the sandblaster. No sand gets in. All right, off to the sandblaster it is. So this is where I'm at right now. I've been fighting with this damn sandblaster for a while. I went and bought a new bag of coal slag, and I figured I'd get coarse. Let me show you. So according to the bag, it's a 1/4 inch minimum. It is coal slag, and it's great. I love it. I've used it for decades, and I did replace. I have a Harbor Freight cabinet, okay. Anyway, I replaced a gun years ago with an old Craftsman. Well, actually, it was like new old stock, like 20 years ago. And this coal slag wouldn't come out, and I'm like, I don't understand. I know it's, you know, the right nozzle size and all that. Look at that. Apparently, I dropped a washer inside there years ago, or at some point. But the sandblasting media I've been using is like dust. It's like glass bead now. It's not, you know, it's not really cutting the way it should. So, yeah. I'm really happy right now because I've been fighting this for hours. So let's get this out of here and back in place. So now that we've got one side done, we're going to give this a brake cleaner bath after I blow it off and get some self-etching primer on it so it doesn't rust. So that pretty much takes care of any dust, grease, oil, whatever, a little bit of brake cleaner. The only issue now is that it's like 40 degrees outside. I've got my garage door open. So I've got to hit it with the heat gun just to kind of keep it warm while we spray the primer. Bolts in all of the holes so that we don't get anything on the threads. And basically I'm going to cover this so it doesn't rust. I did tape the ends where we're going to weld it. Other than that, it's pretty much cut and dry at this point. So now that this one is on the bench, you can clearly see, well, maybe not clearly, they never beveled these edges, which is why these welds broke off. And I can't really, I guess, do some horrible welds, but you can clearly see that they didn't bevel it. They just cut it off, butted the two together and put a bead on the top of it, and that's why it broke. So now we have all this fun of grinding these down and making sure that we don't change. I mean, we can change, you know, a little bit is okay, but anyway, we're gonna grind these flush. We're gonna face them, make sure that everything's square, and then bevel the edges. So you got to be careful not to take, I didn't want to take anything off of the original beam. So basically just pulled off the weld that they had on there. And you can clearly see I did not deface what they had there. I mean, that's maybe this little bit on the corner here. But yeah, this wasn't beveled at all, which is why it came apart. That, and it was poor welding. There was a lot of porosity in a lot of the larger spots that were on here. So first thing, we're gonna need to take these off. And that's pretty simple to do, actually. Pretty easy, I should say. Oh, maybe not. Oh. So what we have is a burr somewhere in here. I got to try to deburr it so we can slide that piece out, that center section. I mean, this is horrible. Absolutely horrible. I mean, look, you can actually see the split. But anyway, I think what we're going to need to do on these is very carefully surgically remove that with an 1/8 inch cutoff wheel. And just take my time to do it. All right, so what I've done here is I very carefully went with that 1/8 inch wheel and cut a groove all the way around where I thought the seam was, and then put this in here so that when I'm tapping on this, it doesn't deform the tube. And you can see where it's just now starting to split. Now, I can't get the wheel in here to get this last little bit, so look at that, ladies and gentlemen. Nice. Right on the seam. You can see we did not take much off of the original tube, and that's going to be beveled anyway. Like I said, they didn't bevel any of these. Which is a huge reason that these actually snapped in the first place. So the second one is now off. Proved to be a little more difficult than the first one, but yeah, I think we're still good as far as not removing any material that should not have been removed. So I think we're still good. I got to get these cleaned up, get these edges ground and touched up, and then off to the sandblaster we go. So I just replaced the protective sheet on my sandblaster. I can actually see what I'm doing now. This is great. So we have both halves of the ball joint beam are now sandblasted. The other one is actually primered. I did that because that was the other day and I knew I wouldn't get to it for a little bit. I really didn't want surface rust building up on it. So I can grind away where I need to. But right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna bevel these edges. I also have the adjusters are now cleaned, good as new, really. But we're gonna bevel these edges as well. Once I have both halves beveled and these beveled, I'll be able to get them clamped up, tacked in place, and then we can start welding. And after careful consideration, because this is a Brazilian beam, I think what I'm gonna wind up doing is running a bead down here with the TIG welder. I'll run it all the way to the end, obviously leave the drain open, but I don't know, because it's a Brazilian beam, it's not looking, it doesn't look anything as good as a stock beam, but it looks the other one looks like it's just got spot welds here and there, and I'm not happy with that. So probably strong enough the way it is, I'm sure it is. But it'll make me feel better running a bead around this. Granted, it's going to take a long time. But I think I should do that before I put the two halves together because it'll be easier now than later. So we're going to go ahead and do that first. So what I meant was these tacks right here, I'm not liking these at all. I don't know. I can't bring myself to just, I can't sell this beam if I'm worried about this. I can't do it. So I have to do it. And one of the things that I need to do, I've already done it on the other side, I'll show you in a second, is to grind these so that they're even. You can actually see where I stopped here. Grind these so that they're even on the whole thing. And then basically we're just gonna run a bead down that with the TIG welder. And I'll be able to sleep better at night knowing that that this is done properly. Basically what we got going on. I like that a lot better, and then add with the original spot welds, I think we're good to go. Not the greatest, but I feel it's a lot stronger than what it was. So I'm gonna run with it. I'm confident that that ain't coming apart. So we're gonna send it. Well, today is another beautiful day, and this is now have to go back into the sandblaster to sandblast this edge so I can run a bead around this whole thing. I was not happy with how the Brazilian beams are welded together, and I just feel more comfortable welding it solid. So the reason I did primer this one is because I knew it was going to take me quite a few days to get to the other side, and I didn't want this sitting out raw. In the element, well, not the elements, but I didn't want the raw steel exposed to the moisture. With that being said, let's throw this into the sandblaster and we're gonna get to it. So now that this is out of the sandblaster, I do have to grind the top of this to kind of even the two out. The Brazilian beams are not very uniform in that aspect. I know stuff's a little messy, but I got both halves done. They're fully welded all the way around. And now we're gonna bevel the edges on these and get them tacked in. And I'll show you how to align all of that here shortly. That's just one. I still have 2, 4, 6, 7 more to go. But I'm not going to keep you guys with that. So one of the things that I wanted to point out is you will notice, as soon as I find my scribe, you'll notice I have this 45 here, and I left a little tiny edge. That is the original. I did polish it up just a hair, so we did remove a little bit, but that is all the way around, that little lip. You can see that's pretty close to 45. And I did the same thing on these. However, on these, we had to go so close to the edge, right here. I mean, really close, because this is a lot thinner wall than the stock beam. This is than the Brazilian beam, rather. But I can't really just butt these up and weld them on. It doesn't really work that way. So I got to do a little bit of calculations on that. I need to mic this tube and mic this tube. Whatever the difference is, I have to split it up. I got to divide that by 2 so that this sits centered with this on a piece of angle. And I can't just butt this up here and tack it, because I did not originally do this beam, and I want to make sure that these are dead nuts in the center. They probably don't have to be exactly dead nuts, but I mean, as close as I can get it, that's where they're going to be. So we went ahead and mic'd these. They are a little out of round, both of them. And what I got was 2.050 as an average. These 1.990 as an average. 990. That's a difference of 60. Well, 60 thousandths. So I need to find 2 30 thousandths shims. That shouldn't be too hard to find, I don't think. But anyway, I need to find those shims, because when I set this up here, I lay the shims underneath these, and this will center it exactly where it needs to be inside the angle. So I got to start looking for shims. So one of the things that you're going to want to do is, you've gone through all this trouble of, cleaning the beam, painting the beam, welding in your adjusters, whatever the case may be. But one of the things you're going to want to do is to clean your spring packs. Now, you don't want to go through all that trouble and then put crappy grease in there. I'm sure this one here has got all kinds of grindings on it and everything else. So we're actually going to separate them and be very careful not to disorient them so that they're not flip-flopped. Some of them you can do that. I've heard you can stiffen up an old spring pack by flipping a couple of them, but I'm not real comfortable with that. So anyway, we're going to leave this one the way it is, and we're going to get them all separated and cleaned. And when we install this, we will apply fresh grease to everything. So I have 3 different beams here that I'm working on, and I've decided to build a jig just so I can do more beams in the future. And the jig will be set up so I can actually do -2, stock, +2, +4, and +6. And in theory, should hold it all together right where it needs to be. It's warm, but not hot. I love that plasma cutter. All right, everybody, the jig is complete. I do have both of those Brazilian beam halves in there, and it's going to work out great for what I'm doing. In this case, normally you wouldn't need a jig, so to speak, because when you do adjusters, you do the top one or the bottom one. You do one first, so the beam is still together. In this case, the adjusters had snapped off, so the beam was in two pieces, basically. So anyway, that's kind of why we had to do this. Or if you're widening a beam, yes, you're going to need to cut the beam in half, spread it apart. But this jig will take care of that. So this is the jig. It is set up. This would be -2 if you wanted to narrow a beam 2 inches. Stock width +2, +4, +6. I don't know. I like it. Show it to you here in a second. Hang on. Well, here it is. It doesn't look like much. Just 2 pieces of angle I had laying around. Actually, it was 1 piece. We cut that. A piece of 1/4 inch flat plate that I had left over from a job that I had done quite some time ago. And I mean, I already showed you the bolt hole pattern, so that kind of self-explanatory, I think. And it stands up right well. I'm kind of wishing I had something. Maybe I should put some legs on it so I could drop it that way. So it'll stay this way or this way. This way is nice, but the beam tends to drop down and not back. I can set it up, set the beam in there, and it'll kind of self-center itself. And then once it's tight, once it's bolted down, then I could drop it. So I don't know, but that's it. Like I said, I didn't video any of this. It wasn't really, I didn't think it was very complicated, but I had no idea how I was going to do it. Yeah, I was winging it. I really was. Let's get on with the whole project here. No worries about it falling off the table with only half of it on there. Maybe if I was doing a +6, might be an issue, but pretty good. I do just need to tighten these down though. I'm still on the fence. I don't know if I should make this beam, you know, ±2 as far as your ride height. Do I center the adjuster? Do I make it a full 4-inch drop or a full 4-inch raise? I don't know. I'm on the fence right now. I gotta think about this. Well, it's settled. We're going to go midway. I don't have a buyer for this beam, so I'm not building it for me. I mean, if I was building it for me, I'd raise it. But so now that we've got our beam bolted in place, I do not have anything in there right now. They're just sitting there. Probably shouldn't while I'm banging on it. So we'll take those out for now. Right now, we're going to grease the bearings. This is what I use here. Valvoline high-speed multi-vehicle. It works pretty good. It's what I use on Mud Cricket. It's what I've used for, well, I can't even tell you how long now. And it seems to hold up. I've never had any wheel bearing issues from grease failure. I've had a few because of my own stupidity in my younger days, but we're going to pack these. So one of the things I have to show you is I have to run these backwards because the outside edge, how do I explain it? They don't quite sit all the way down, but on the back side, coincidentally, this is the exact same size as the bearing, so I could very lightly, and I do mean lightly, you don't need to beat them in. And you'll hear them when they hit bottom, that the banging gets a little bit lighter. Well, I can get this one flush. This one, I gotta change them because the top one is smaller than the bottom. And again, you have to run them upside down. Unless you have one that fits perfect, which I don't. So this is what we're gonna run with. And again, very lightly. You heard it? I hope. So those bearings are in place. I'm not going to bore you with the other side. Now, I'll be honest, this is the first set of adjusters I've ever done. I've welded many beams before, but I've never installed a set of adjusters. We're going to get a zip tie. Zip ties are great. They do slide on the... I've used electrical tape many times on a greased unit. It's not bad at all. I don't know where my dikes are, so looks like we're using this thing. All right, so make sure those are flat. We're just gonna smear. We'll give it a smear coat just to make sure everything is moving properly and protected. Nice and squishy, just the way I like it. All right, this glove's coming out. All right, so it would help if I could see what I'm doing, right? All right, so grub screw is there. That's there. This may take a while. I'm not gonna lie. Grub screw. Look at that. Ladies and gentlemen. Now we just hit the zip tie. All you gotta do is tap it. Get it to keep it on. I've got these marked here at full adjustment. So right now, this is stock. If this was set up, and to adjust it, you'd back this off and this piece would slide back with it, which would lower the car. Total, supposedly 4 inches. I don't see it, but maybe. So one of the things that I just found out, I do need 30,000 shims. I actually didn't just find that out, but I do need 30,000 shims behind this and in front of it, or I'm sorry, below it and behind it, because the adjusters are 60 thousandths difference from the outside to the outside of this. If we split that in half, it's 30 thousandths. So I need a 30 thousandths shim on the bottom, 30 thousandths shim on the top, and that will hold it out center of the beam. So the issue I'm having is, I don't know if you can see it, but you can see that rotating. I need to find a set of trailing arms to install before I weld this. And it'll make me feel a lot better. And I'm almost positive that if the trailing arms were there, it's holding everything centered. And I don't have to worry about a little bit of deviation going on. And if there is any deviation, it'll be minimized by the trailing arms. So until then, I'm dead in the water. So we did manage to find a set of trailing arms. It took a little while, but we got them cleaned up, sandblasted, painted, and now installed. So I've already taken the liberty of centering the beam It is kind of off center as far as the adjusters go. The adjusters are going to be center, but I've got a bit larger gap on one side than I do on the other. Not a big deal. I just use 1/8 inch wire on one side and 3/32 on the other. So I am going to use the MIG welder to tack these in place because I want to get them tacked as fast as I can. If I TIG welded them, it would take me a little bit longer, and I'm afraid of, you know, warpage, because when you tack something, as that tack shrinks, it pulls on, you know, so as that tack shrinks, let's say we were tacking this in place, you put a tack on the top, as it shrinks, it's going to pull up. So I need to get the tacks done as fast as possible. And we're going to tack it in with the MIG welder, and we're going to finish it off with the TIG welder. And as I'm sure you guys have heard, we did have a nice earthquake here the other day. Matter of fact, there was a tremor about, I don't know, about 30 minutes ago. So hopefully stuff don't start falling off the walls. We'll see. Oh, really? We are experiencing technical difficulties. Man, if you don't have a flex MIG, I mean, this thing is the bomb. I love it. Well, here goes nothing, guys. Now to get this unbolted, flipped over, tack the backside, and then we get her prepped up for welding on the TIG. All right, so this is what we've got. I know that seems like a big gap, but it's not that hard to fill if you're doing it right. So that's another reason I'm using the TIG welder. I could do it with the MIG. I feel more confident with the TIG. But those are our tacks. Those are holding everything in place. And I'm gonna get started TIGging. Well, I had some issues recording. I don't know if my phone was too close to the welders. The high frequency was screwing it up, but it didn't record a damn thing other than like snow. But anyway, there it is. A little hotter than I'd like it, but I had to crank the heat up a little bit. It was kind of taking a little bit too long, and I couldn't go as fast as I wanted to. So at any rate, that's it. As soon as it cools off, we're gonna get everything all loosened up and make sure everything still adjusts. Then we're gonna get some paint on it. All right, she's cooled off. We've got full adjustment on both, no issues. We already pulled the Zerks, get some screws in there, so when we squirt this, we're gonna primer the whole thing first, get this cured, and then I don't know what color we're going, I guess black, but we're gonna get it squirted.